Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of a market review using ICT Concepts. In particular, here's fair value gap trading strategy and a market review of Tuesday, the 30th of August, 2022. So let's dive in. First of all, I always refer to the dollar index just to try and get an understanding of where the bias may be. So yesterday we dug into the buy side liquidity and retraced and closed for the day there. So from my perspective, not a clear bias whether we're going to be bullish or bearish. But what I can see is we are in a premium area when it comes to this range. So based on that, after having punched the liquidity, I would think we are due a potential retracement, but that's not always guaranteed. And currently, based on this bias, it's hard to take anything over to any of the other markets. So from my perspective, it's a case of just then looking for potential setups that the other markets, such as the indexes and the Forex pairs, display and what's available, and then take it from there. But it's always good to keep an eye on this. But if we close, at this kind of level, we can see a potential swing high forming, which can represent a down move, further retracement. So we'll just have to wait and see how we get on with that. Switching over to the S&P 500, so we saw a nice bit of action today. Saw a bearish move again. What we had some high impact news released at 10 a.m. New York local time. So a lot of volatility around about that time. And what we saw is over the past few days, we've had this fair value gap form on the upside. And today we dug into that fair value gap and then retraced and then dug further into this fair value gap below. Yesterday, I mentioned that we do have some points of interest below if the dollar index is to trend higher. We had this fair value gap and also these sell side liquidity areas if we do make it that far. In terms of any trading setups, I personally didn't really take any trades or really analyze any potential trades, mainly because around the news event release time, we saw this huge bearish move here. And that kind of put me off. I didn't really want to go in there hunting for opportunities after such a move had taken place. However, before this move came, I did identify a potential setup forming around about this area. Yesterday, during my review, I did mention, well, yesterday's setup, I was actually looking for this move to happen yesterday. So I had this markup yesterday, identified we had all this sell side liquidity resting under these relative equal lows. And, I saw this buy side liquidity swept, and I was looking to see a displacement take place here, and I think I entered at this point looking for my target below here, but it stopped me out, and that move seems to have taken place today. One key difference is that as part of this uptrend move during New York nighttime, we did actually dig into this fair value gap, and that is actually present. So if I switch over to a higher time frame on the daily, we can see, as I mentioned earlier, this fair value gap. So during that time, we dug into it, and at the same time took out the high of yesterday, so taking out that buy side liquidity. And one other thing as well that I noticed, so as part of that fair value gap that we have on the daily, there's also this fair value gap on the 15 minute within that daily. and we could see how nicely that respected that fair value gap. So I saw that ICT posted a tweet earlier highlighting this same thing. So this was actually a entry opportunity, but from my perspective, I didn't really see that. I didn't really see um, uh, this opportunity in terms of, yep, I can see this, taking out this buy side liquidity, dug into the daily fair value gap, dug into this 15-minute fair value gap as well. I didn't really see that opportunity. So in hindsight, upon reviewing it, doing my technical analysis now, I can see that it's quite obvious. But at the time, I didn't really see that. What I was looking for was something a little bit further down. So identified, we took out this buy side liquidity. I was then waiting for a displacement to the downside, and then as part of that displacement, I was looking for a fair value gap to be formed. So we took out that buy side liquidity, we dug into this daily fair value gap, and then we had that sudden move, that dynamic displacement to the downside. And as part of that move, we saw this 15-minute fair value gap. So what I was hoping for was a bit of action, something like this, take out this um, this market structure. So we would see a shift in market structure, and then I was hoping to see something like this. So that would have been my entry. That is what I was waiting for. But then when I didn't get that and saw this move, it kind of just put me off. So I took a step back and uh, turn my focus to something else. So I'll have a look at the Euro USD chart in a minute, where I did take a short entry. So this kind of this move, it put me off, but in hindsight, there were some further opportunities in this move down itself. So if I just quickly go into this as well. So um, with this move down, we could see that where was the target? The target was then looking to be this daily fair value gap to the downside. So that would have been the eventual target if a short opportunity had been taken. Um, but if we dig into a lower time frame, in particular the 1 minute, so this is again, ICT shared this not too long ago on Twitter, and this is an entry that he actually took place in himself. So he took a short trade on this fair value gap that was created during 10:30 a.m. So this fair value gap was created. So what we can see here is that um, just to do a bit of analysis on this entry, is we saw this move down following the news event, and then as part of this range move as well, we can see price retracing back into a discount as part of this range, as part of the retracement, which then allowed potentially a couple of opportunities as well. So as part of this fair value gap, you can then either enter around this point, or around about this point, with probably your stop loss. So let's say we entered at this point here. Stop loss would be the swing high, and then your eventual targets from this point could be something like taking out that sell side, or even the close of the fair value gap. So one thing again that ICT actually called earlier in the day, before this move even took place, his point of interest was um, the bottom of that fair value gap. So the price of it was what he called for was 3964 and a half, and that's exactly what the current low of the day got to as part of the 1:45 p.m. candle, which lines up with the bottom of that fair value gap. So yeah, missed that, but in hindsight, nice little review to do. In terms of rest of the week's action, with this fair value gap um, having been dug into, we may see a potential retracement. So if we just take a look at that, the high of that to the low of this range, and we've got the equilibrium at this point, um, and a discount above this area. So we might dig into that. So depending on how dollar looks tomorrow as well, we might see some a bit of bullish action where a retracement is formed before a potential another leg down if we are bullish on dollar midterm. I'm going to switch over to the euro. No, not euro USD. I mean, I think I said earlier that I took a trade on euro USD. It was actually GU, so GBPUSD. So just have a look at the daily. Got a bit of markup, so let me just remove that for a sec. In terms of the trend, obviously we are bearish. We took out some, sell side liquidity here, sell side liquidity here. So until we see a reversal forming, we still have to just assume that we're trending, downwards. So bias is still bearish. So looking for short terms if the opportunity presents itself. And to me, that opportunity did present itself. So what I saw here was just ignore this action here for a second. Yesterday's action, we had some buy side liquidity here formed, and then we had some resting buy side liquidity at the high of the day yesterday. During the London AM session today, we saw these candles digging into that buy side liquidity, and then we had displacements after that. So that to me looks like an opportunity to hunt for some short trading opportunities as part of the New York AM trading session, the New York AM kill zone. So I can't remember exactly what I was doing. Okay, so my first point of interest. So following this sweep of the buy side liquidity, um, I then was looking for displacement to the downside. So from 5:15 onwards, looked for displacements, got that displacement, got this move down, got a market structure shift as well, knocking out this swing low here. And then I identified that as part of this move down, we have this fair value gap created on the 15-minute time frame. So I was waiting for a potential entry for price to retrace into this fair value gap and then target the sell side liquidity of the range. So that's what my intention was. But price continued to go lower, so didn't really get that opportunity. So I dropped down into a lower time frame just to see what's going on, see what other opportunities we had. So what I'm going to do, one of the guys messaged me and they said maybe I should use the replay functionality just to kind of walk through what was going on at the time. So what I'm going to do is I am going to let's switch it. Let's go down to 7:30. So I'll replay from 7:30 just to show what's going on here. Okay. Okay. So just in a replay to 7:30, and then I can forward the candles one at a time. So if we just forward, yeah, keep going. Yeah, so I saw this continued move down, and I started to see a retracement, started to see some buy side kind of relative equal highs here. So I switched to the 1 minute candle just to see potentially more opportunities that I can look for. So what I did here was I just waited. What's the time? So we're on 8:26 at the moment. So if we just continue going forward, I just waited here to see what price was doing, and then we saw this energetic move to the upside, and it took out at this point, it took out this buy side liquidity. So again, that kind of gave me an indication. Let's see if we can see a move to the downside. Let's see if we can see a displacement. So if we just go forward a few candles, yeah, got exactly that. So we had this displacement at around 9:30, had this market structure shift, and then I identified that we have this fair value gap. So I actually set up a sell limit order to enter. And then as part of 9:40, I entered the trade, had my stop loss set to this swing high, and just waited to see what it did after that. But just a couple of things in hindsight. So what I did was um, let me just recap on something. So, as part of last week's demo trading, took a few losses, and I think that kind of played with my mind a little bit today. So I was a little bit hesitant letting my trade go the distance or do its thing, even though I was, quite comfortable with the setup. I think the emotions got to me a little bit. So what I ended up doing was, um, I mean, the thought in the back of my mind was that I just want to bank some profits, at least 1.5 to 1. That's what I was aiming for, and I think that's what I ended up. No, I actually ended up getting 1.15 to 1. So what ended up happening was that I took my partials, took it on this target here, and this target was an opposing fair value gap, and that was my initial target. So I took 50% of the trade here, and then what I did was moved my stop loss to this swing high at that moment, which is okay. I took some profits, moved up my stop loss down, but what I did next was probably not a great move in hindsight. So if I just walk through that move, what I ended up doing was I, after seeing this move, after seeing this bit of sell side liquidity taken by this move, I then decided to move my stop loss to this swing high, just to protect my position. And what ended up happening was continued to move down, and then price retraced back to this level, and it literally just knocked me out there before continuing down, which I'll display in a second. But what I should have done in hindsight is I should have also identified that actually there was a fair value gap here. So that is actually an area, that the algorithm will potentially reprice back to. So me having my stop loss set in that area as the price is not too far below it was a bit of a silly move in hindsight, because I should have allowed for retracement to come back into this area, which it pretty much did. So if I continue with this move, look what happened. Wow, can you see that? It literally hit my target that I had in mind, but yeah, it stopped me out. So in hindsight, shouldn't have done that. Could have had a nice profit from that trade, but it wasn't that greed got to me, because greed would probably be more a case of me not moving my stop losses down, not taking profits, and not being realistic. It was probably more a case of fear that took over. So in the back of my mind, I had a few losses, I was a few percent down. So, fear got to me, and just made me essentially lose out on this trade. In hindsight, what I should have realized, what I should have done is take a step back, and just, let the setup do its thing. Now, I had a nice setup, had a nice entry, got some nice areas to target. And you know what I could have done if I was feeling confident, if I trusted the the action and my setup, is I could have, you know, held on to a position to ride it down into these lower targets here, which, you know, if I forward, switch to the 5 minute, and if I just, you know, continue going, we can see it absolutely melting. So I was literally watching that and thinking to myself, you know, it's absolutely typical that this is happening. But it, you know, in hindsight, it's helped me learn. You know, this was a really good lesson for me actually, and the lesson was that, you know, trust my setup, trust my targets. You know, ICT teaches, you know, what areas to target, when to move your stop losses. So I didn't really follow that kind of, and you know, not following that advice and that strategy, you know, I got stopped out earlier and, you know, lost out on potentially some really nice gains there. But at the end of the day, you know, had over a one-to-one win, one-to-one risk. So, you know, happy days still. So it's not really a big issue. But, you know, I sound like I am live trading, even though I am demo trading. I'm reacting as if it was live trading, and that's what I'm trying to do because, you know, as I mentioned yesterday, I'm trying to, you know, emotionally prepare myself for whenever I do start live trading. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown, and have a good day. Speak to you guys soon.